Hello everyone, have a nice day. What would you do if you woke up one morning and found that the thing you put all your trust in, all your capital, sweat and dreams was swept away overnight? That is the story of Alex, who had just invested all his money in a grapefruit garden by the river, hoping that the next crop would change his life. But Typhoon Matmo came without warning. The wind howled, the river water rose, sweeping away everything in its path. When the sky just brightened, the grapefruit garden, Alex's last hope, was submerged in water. The warehouse, seedlings, even the company he had built over the years, were on the verge of collapse. In the midst of the ruins, only Alex and Tuna remained, the girl who had accompanied him through many storms. Will Tuna stay and start over with him, or will she leave when everything turns to ashes? Join me in this story to discover the life and death journey of a man standing in the midst of life's storm. Early that morning, Alex sat quietly at his desk. The dim light from the computer screen shone on his face, illuminating his dark eyes after a sleepless night. On the news, images of waves towering over rooftops and roads torn apart by floods appeared continuously. The announcer's voice echoed evenly, mixed with the sound of the wind whistling through the cracks in the door, like a mournful song, signaling something ominous. Alex clenched his coffee cup tightly in his hand, his heart heavy. Just yesterday, he was standing in the middle of the grapefruit garden by the river, proudly looking at each round, plump fruit, thinking about the biggest harvest of his life. All his capital, effort, and faith were put into it. And then Typhoon Matmo came, fierce and unexpected. The phone rang, interrupting his train of thought. It was Lan, his secretary, her voice trembling on the other end of the line. Mr. Alex, the grapefruit garden is gone. The water rose so fast, the whole warehouse was swept away. There's nothing left, brother. At that moment, time seemed to stop. The sound of the rain outside the porch mixed with the howling wind, creating a gloomy symphony. The screen in front of him blurred, not sure if it was because of the steam, or because his eyes were wet. He stood up and walked to the window. The rain still didn't stop. In the distance, the gray sky was covered in a thick layer of fog. In Alex's head, there was only one question echoing. Why did everything disappear so quickly? Behind the damaged numbers, there were sweat dreams, years of savings. Now, all that remained was a deep puddle and floating memories. He understood that not only his assets were lost, but his faith, his willpower, and even his very being were being tested to the limit. Without time to think much, he hurried to the place. In front of Alex was a vast river that was churning, the water level rising every minute, every second, like a giant beast that wanted to swallow everything. The wind whipped against his face, making him squint. The thin raincoat was not enough to block the bone-chilling cold. The secretary standing next to him whispered, "Mr. Alex, the water has reached the first row of trees. If we don't move now, the new seedlings will all be ruined." Without thinking any further, Alex immediately rushed out. The group of three, Lan and the garden owner, ran against the wind, trying to pull each tray of remaining grapefruit seedlings to higher ground. Their feet were covered in mud, but they still gritted their teeth and refused to give up. They moved each sapling, each small pot, amidst the rumbling thunder in the distance. When the last row was safely lifted up, they turned around and looked back. The entire grapefruit garden below was submerged in water. Alex stood still, his heart heavy. If it had been just a moment slower, perhaps even that small hope would have been gone. The wind grew stronger. The howling sound mixed with the pouring rain, creating a rumbling sound that echoed throughout the garden. Alex and Lan continued wading through the cold water, heading towards the higher ground at the edge of the grapefruit garden. Every step was a challenge. The mud was soggy, broken branches blocked the way, but they were determined not to stop. Arriving at the place, Alex looked around, panting. A few rows of grapefruit trees on high ground were still intact, not flooded. He and Lan quickly built temporary earthen embankments, then ordered the garden owner to gather all the remaining seeds, fertilizers, and tools to move to a safe place. The rain was still pouring heavily, but in his eyes, There was a gleam of determination. "We can't save everything, but we have to keep what we can," Alex said hoarsely. Lan nodded, bit her lip, trying to cover her phone from the rain, to contact for more workers to help. Amidst the devastation, they found strength in their belief that if they stood still, they could start over. The sky was getting darker and darker. The dark clouds were gathering low, as if they wanted to swallow the ground. Typhoon Matmo was howling fiercely. The rain was pouring down. The river water was rising, carrying garbage, trees, and sacks from everywhere. Alex stood in the middle of the rushing water, feeling every shiver in his knees, not because of fear, but because he knew time was passing by every second. "Alex, the water is almost reaching the garden above. What should we do now?" Lan shouted in the wind. He looked around. The last rows of grapefruits were still standing firm in the rain. Alex gritted his teeth and ordered, "Collect them all. Any trees that have not sunk must be picked immediately. Even if you can only save a part, don't let it all be lost." The group raced against the water, some picking, some carrying, some transferring grapefruits to the truck. Each flash of lightning seemed to depict a scene of survival in the midst of destruction. When the last baskets of grapefruits were transported, a huge wave came and swallowed the land they had just stood on. Before he could rest, Alex's phone rang incessantly. "Alex, the cold storage is about to collapse. The electrical system is short-circuited." He paused, between two choices: abandon everything to keep safe, or risk his life to return to the warehouse, save the remaining goods, the company's last hope. Lightning flashed, illuminating his face drenched in rainwater and his steely determination. "Everyone retreats the high building." Lan and I returned to the warehouse. Both of them rushed into the water. The door burst open, water rushed in. Alex cut the circuit breaker, and together with Lan, tied down each floating box. The wind howled, the electric pole collapsed close to the roof, the white light blinded. Lan screamed, pulled Alex down, narrowly escaping death. When the storm passed, the warehouse was only half left, but they were still alive. Alex looked up at the sky, tired but determined. "If you lose everything, you can start again, but if you fall, that's the real end." The storm passed, leaving behind a desolate landscape. The rain had stopped, leaving only a heavy humidity that filled the air. His whole body was soaked, covered in mud, but there was no room in his mind for fatigue. Instead of returning home like usual, Alex turned onto the small road leading to Tuna's farm, the place he had visited on the most peaceful days. The riverside road was now mottled. The rows of areca trees were leaning. In the distance, Tuna's wooden house still stood, the kitchen smoke rising faintly in the middle of the devastated scene, like a fragile dot of light in the gray sea. Tuna was cleaning up a few broken potted plants when she heard the sound of a car stopping in front of the gate. She looked up and was stunned. In front of her was a haggard Alex, his hair wet, his face dirty, his eyes sad as if he had just lost the whole world. He stood there, silent for a long time, then said softly, "Tuna, everything is gone." His voice choked. Then, as if someone had unlocked the lock, the words that had been pent up all morning poured out. He told everything from the moment the water flooded the garden, from the moment he had to risk his life to return to the warehouse, to the sight of the goods floating in the water, and even the fear of thinking that the company, his pride, might never stand up again. Tuna listened quietly, his eyes sparkling, not interrupting. When he reached the last part, his voice became hoarse. "Maybe the company will go bankrupt. Capital, goods, partners, all are waiting for an answer from me. I don't know whether they can still get up." A long silence, only the sound of the wind blowing through the distorted metal roof. Then Tu and I approached, gently placing his hand on his shoulder. "Alex, money can be lost, the house can collapse, but the people are still here. The important thing is that you are still alive. There is still a chance to start over. The storm will pass, the sky will clear up again." The words were simple, but so warm that it made Alex's chest tighten. He bowed his head, forced a smile, and tears fell. For many years, he had always been a strong person, a support for others, but at this moment, he was just a boy lost in the rubble. Finding some peace in the gentle eyes before him, Dr. Na poured him a cup of hot tea, steam rising. She said slowly, "I believe in you, Alex. Just like I believe that this land will be green again, as long as you don't give up." Outside, the late afternoon light gradually appeared between the broken layers of dark clouds. In that small house, two people sat opposite each other. Amidst the ruins of the storm, faith sprouted again.
Ito, nilaw. Nangati.